So we're going to have Ishmael, obviously Mick, and John Hubbard and myself. We're going to do a fun little panel similar to yesterday's lunch that we've dubbed SIEM Intervention, right? This was a pretty fun. We probably spent way more time talking about this than actually. I have no clue how well this will go. I would say we almost encouraged dissension on this one and disagreements. That's totally fair. Sometimes when you're told the truth, it hurts. So we'll give John a second to gear up.
I also want to say we realize that there are folks that work at SIEMs.
Some whiskey?
Sorry. We're not going to be picking on, well, at least I can't speak for the other folks, but I won't pick on a particular SIEM vendor by name. From time to time, at my prior gig, we would have clients and potential clients ask us, what SIEM technology stack should we use? And what's really weird to me is, like, in InfoSec, there's like this whole Ford Chevy kind of thing going on of like, oh, SIEM brand X is better than this. And like, I do not care. I straight up don't care. I got a load of wood I got to put in the pickup truck and go down the road. I don't care if it's a Ford, if it's a Chevy, or a whatever.
I'm more of a minivan person myself. So, just throw that
All right. But so I guess the long and short of it is that every SIEM has some rough spots to it. And take this for tough love for what it is. Maybe a rant of another time will be like the reason SIEMs stink is because of us, and we can have a rant on that too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this is you don't know what you don't know, and the expectations against the tool. Like, let's quit calling it SIEM for a second. It's a tool, and when the tool fails us, isn't that normally where we start complaining, and then the tool matures? But you don't know what you don't know, and the tools have gotten very much so better in the cool, sexy, dare I say, machine learning, behavior analytics, because that sells well. But in the areas we really need it to improve, log enrichment, some just do really poorly at that.
And that's why we're here today, right? Is we're all seeing what the capabilities of a SIEM can be and hoping to spread that across all vendors so that we can all have those capabilities despite whatever product we may actually have.
Exactly.
And it may seem obvious, but something that we typically see is that people don't have requirements, right? They don't know the requirements. So it's like, oh, so we have to have a SOC, so let's buy a SIEM, right? And then sometimes they go out, and someone told me, like yesterday, we went out and bought 3 SIEMs, right? Awesome. It's just like endpoint agents. The more you buy, the more secure it's going to be, right? Yeah, so having requirements and knowing what you want to do, and especially knowing that there's so many different things, like Carson was talking about, all these different things we could do with a SIEM, right? It's like, what kind of SIEM do we really need, right?
A lot of people don't realize that a SIEM, they think it's one tool when it really could be many, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, well, if you get a SIEM, you get an EDR, you get behavioral analytics, and that's all separate tools. It's not all one package. But I don't know that management understands that.
Correct.
Yeah.
I don't think we understand that sometimes. I mean, and I think a lot of this is the maturity level. Like we were talking about that earlier. There are some really sweet, awesome pieces of that massive portrayal. Carson talked on multiple of them. There's some really cool things, but if you're not mature enough, you shouldn't be dabbling in this area. So all of that comes in. Do we have a...
Yeah, I was going to say.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm doing it. Slideshow, I think, to
Well,
go
you're
with this.
running the thing.
There we go.
I'm running the thing. Yeah. Well, we know where this is going already. All right. So let's sit down. We need to talk. Breathe in. Okay. Yeah. So the point is, we do need to talk about a few things. Appreciate Mick for taking the time to put our fun little PowerPoint together. Mick's great. All these guys, I love working with these guys. Lots of valuable input. What are we actually doing here? We're having a quick, dirty intervention. So this is just us getting down. We've been smoking the crank a little too much, right? We need to actually talk about your health, bring you out of stress, make things work for you. And really at the core of this is an act of love, right? This is very much so an act of love. We just want to talk about things, to bring awareness to it, to disagree about it, just to talk about it. So let's just dive right in. Mick, you want to start?
Sure. So there are a lot of things going well. A lot of us have been in InfoSec for quite some time, and I remember a time back before there were SIEMs. And, it used to be when something went bump in the night, you had to get out some pretty ugly awk or sed scripts and just start crunching through the command line. And we've gotten a lot better. I think where we've kind of hopped the tracks, though, is that part of it is the way SIEMs are being sold. I would say most SIEM deployments now, unfortunately, in my experience, are just checkbox deployments where they're like, hey, we got, like you said, 3, well then we get 3 checkboxes, and it doesn't make sense. And so there's a lot of missed opportunities there. It's kind of one of those best of times, worst of times moments.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and a lot of that is driven by compliance, right? Which is, again, can be good, can be evil. And it can be good if it drives the right thing, and you get budget for implementing these things, but it could be evil if all you want to do is just to be compliant, right? And we know we have to go beyond that.
Just smack it. No, please don't do that.
So I have a question for you guys. Where in the Gartner hype cycle do you think, no, seriously, where in the Gartner hype cycle do you guys think SIEM, when done remotely appropriately, where do you think on the Gartner hype cycle is it right now?
Can you describe the Gartner hype cycle?
Hey, what's Gartner?
You have technology trigger, you have the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and the plateau of productivity.
So that's an awesome question, and I think part of it is that's gonna really depend on organization to organization. Some of my clients are incredibly mature organizations and are actually doing a damn fine job of running a SIEM. And then there's others who have just bought this thing thinking it's the compliance appliance. They slap it in and, hey, the lights are blinking, and Miller time. So I don't know if that's, I don't know if there's a fair way to answer that question.
Yeah, it's funny, right before coming here, I was reading 3 papers that, I know it's painful, that Gartner released. Anyone working for Gartner here before? Say something? Okay. I have to say, actually, we invited Anton Joankin to come, and he couldn't make it, right? Okay. But he helped us out with putting together some of the summit. And I read these papers, and it's funny because what they're saying is that, well, SIEM has been out there for 20 years. Obviously, we're not using it for how it should be used. So let's kind of redefine what the SIEM should mean, right? And as you said, it's just one tool. It's more than one tool. It's a tool that will have to interface with maybe your orchestration tools, case management tools, forensics tools, threat intelligence platforms. It doesn't mean that we have to bring all of these things into the SIEM. It means that the SIEM has to interact with all of these different things to get the most out of these platforms.
And let's face it, we like beating on Gartner, right? But Anton has some really awesome blogs that are very opinionated and aligned with exactly what we're talking about. Like he will say, like, yeah, in the Magic Quadrant, this might be the best of the best, but quite frankly, none of y'all need that. Like he has some very, very high quality blogs on this. So
hey, I noticed that a lot of the presentations during this event were largely from the perspective of a platform developer and analyst, kind of like the combo of perspective. But in larger organizations, you're certainly approaching a maturity level where there are 2 different teams. Can you speak to this? Is this what success looks like? And can you then kind of turn around and offer more of a customer service perspective to your analysts? Can you speak to that?
I can say that we, at my organization, we have a lot of our analysts writing the rules and doing some of this type of stuff. We've had a lot of success with that. Our senior analysts know the tool very well, and they've been very effective at writing some of the rules and doing all the stuff that we've been talking about this week, which I'll be talking about in my talk in an hour from now. But yeah, we kind of have a little bit of blending of we take care of the tool and we also operate the tool and respond to what it finds, and it works out pretty well for us.
So I think I've had quite a few experiences that are the opposite, just because of culture. Because, you know, it varies from organization to organization. A lot of what I'm seeing is when they do split those roles, it's another opportunity of us versus them. And no, my way's the right way, and all of a sudden there's added barriers. I mean, we've got another talk coming up about cracking the upper management code. A lot of that's probably communication. And it's another huge communication barrier, even within ourselves, like SOC team to SOC team, that, you know, I hate to say it, but we just need to learn to play in the same playground.
Because you have other customers for SIEM other than the analysts.
Yeah.
Someone has to be that recipient of feedback against customer service requests. And so it's not us against them, it's you're providing a service to customers. So there's got to be a line at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, so I'll tell you this. I've got one client who really gives me a lot of hope, and this really weirded me out. They're a very DevOps heavy shop, and they're like doing real DevOps. It's not like buzzword bingo. And one of the things that really impressed me is that their QA department is the one who owns the actual use case creation and development, and they view the SIEM as a continual QA system, and security is just a defect of running like bad code or bad configurations, and that they see the SIEM as a continual QA tool. And I thought that that was just, like, when I heard that, I was like, well, damn, like, I wish I had thought of that. That's an awesome way of running that, and it's great. And the thing that's really bonkers about that is that they're also tracking uptime and other things as within the SIEM, and so the owners of these app stacks consume the SIEM without even really understanding that it's a SIEM. They just see it as this is the dashboard, and it's kind of funny. They call it the dashboard, and everything just flows from there. They've got a lot of business cases in there that aren't like traditional security things. I don't know. I've been really hounding them hard to do a presentation on how to do like a white paper or something, and they're a very secretive organization. So I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but it was a really eye-opening experience.
It's funny because Gartner was talking in that paper, they mentioned also this, that some organizations are starting to use SIEM as business analytics as well, not just strictly security, which I found interesting.
And they probably should, in my opinion, because if you've got that level of visibility, do it.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yep.
If you have, since everyone has a limited budget, do you guys have similar? What are your opinions about where to spend your limited budget? If you're going to do a SIEM, do you start with the platform? Do you start with logging? Do you start with your sensors? If you have a limited budget, where do you start?
Can I answer this in a very extremely biased way? I would totally send them to 555 and train my people. Now, in all fairness, the number one deficit I truly to the heart believe is we don't have trained staff, yet we say, go out, make this thing work, architect it to its fullest extent, and it's going to be magical. And the vendor, they're going to make sure it is because they're taking my money.
Yeah.
And you are intentionally setting yourself up to fail. And I don't think this is even specific to SIEM. It's just I feel we really feel it in this space. But like I have so many people that'll take 555 and they go back and they re-architect everything. And it's not anything magical. It's just you don't know what you don't know, and you have to train your people.
Yeah,
Then you can answer that question from what tool, do I need a spade, do I need the hammer, what SIEM's going to help me do that the best, and it goes a lot smoother.
Would you build into your SOW a talent analysis by the implementer, if not the vendor? Because that's what I think is the way to do it is, you're going to pay somebody to help you do the implementation. If you do it that way, part of the implementation, I think, should be review my staffing and see if my staff is adequate or where I have to augment to really get the most out of the platform. Because once they leave, they don't care. Whatever.
And it could be augmentation like that. It could be MSSPs. And when you said limited budget, I was thinking, what's your motivation, right? And what is the limited budget? For a small company, it might be, okay, let's go to the cloud, like Carson was saying, right? And let's use a multi-tenancy SIEM platform where I just get this as a service. And that can work for certain environments to get started, right? And is that ideal? No.
No.
But,
Yeah.
right? But maybe they will fail bigger if they start with something that, buying just a solution and they don't have people to manage it, they don't have.
Yeah. Well,
so sometimes it's like driving the culture, the right culture as well.
Well, going back to what you're saying, let's quit treating compliance as evil, because it's a great thing. And if it's your starting point, then you can start to establish use cases and success stories and widen your range, because you got at least some money to get something in the door. But you still absolutely have to have the people who know what they're doing underneath the hood, or you're just going to have a checkbox.
So just to pick up on some of the pieces that you've pointed out already, maybe, but I'm going to try and see if I can put it in a different perspective. There are many organizations and groups that have had a SIEM. It's like in probably, I guess, phase 2 of what Carson was saying, where now everyone's disillusioned, or maybe that was phase 3, where you're disillusioned. Management's like, we're not giving you any more time or effort, we're not supporting you. No one likes it. It's just, you're 2 steps away from it just being put on a shelf. So of some of the things you've talked about, some of the things you haven't talked about, how would a SOC or a security group try and re-energize interest in that SIEM and then turn around and make it a viable part of an organization when everyone's decided, well, we spent all this money and it's not giving us anything because they had
what you're
false,
telling me,
false
though,
views of.
In almost every case that I see of that, and I'm sure yours is the same thing, you've spent all this money, you have this SIEM, whatever, the business is ready to shut you down because you haven't proved anything. And that's our fault on the implementation then.
It's because they, when they bought it, they thought it was going to, take the baby to school, slice bread, and solve or cure cancer within 2 weeks.
Sure.
No.
And well, it doesn't. And so when it didn't, and you kept saying, well, I'm still, collecting, still getting collectors out there, and I'm still building dashboards, and they're like, what's taking you so long? The demo guys did it in 2 hours. So, and then even when you provide something, they're like, well, this isn't sexy. It's alerting on failed logons. So,
right.
So now, it just never meets their expectations.
Well,
I've talked to other groups like this, other security people, and they're, so now they're stuck because management won't give them any more money so that they can actually make it do the sexy things, and they can't get any other groups to buy in because those groups are like, it doesn't do anything for us. We have our own whiz-bang thing. And so, how would you suggest those organizations then reinvigorate the whole thing?
Well, so not to sound jaded or anything, but every phase in the SIEM implementation thing is a point of fail. It really is. And if you think that a SIEM is going to solve problems, you fundamentally don't understand what a SIEM is. Because, well, hold on, I'll get to that in a second. The problem is a SIEM, by its very nature, doesn't just tell you that the baby's ugly, which you don't want to hear, but it actually iterates through, like, look how the eyes are all googly, the teeth are all crooked, the hair's all, like, messed up, and, like, that is painful to hear, and now, as a business, you have to act on that. Before, if you didn't know, you had a defensible situation where you could be like, hey, we didn't know. Now you're in a situation where you have duty to act. What I would contend, and what I always try to do with my clients when we do a SIEM, is the very first use case, availability. That's what clients care about, at least almost all of my clients. So we do a, health checks through the SIEM where we're showing like, hey, how are the services running? Or if it is a situation where we have like recorded transactions through something like, JMeter, you will have the SIEM actually periodically run those and then say whether or not those are within tolerance, and then handle actual business issues as that. And then people want to come on board, and then you start rolling in the security things. And I realize that's a radically different approach, but I've had a little bit of luck with that, because otherwise, like I said, you're just making a ton of work and you're making nothing but enemies.
Yeah, so, and I want to build off that. I think that's really great, especially if you put yourself in that rut. But I do think a lot of getting to that point is our fault, in that I see a lot of, you have this multiple month, 6 month long POC. You've proved that the $500,000, million, whatever plus purchase is worth it. And then you start rollout and you completely ignore what you just did in the POC. And I see this time and time again. And instead what they'll do is like data collection hell, where they'll spend a year or 2 years doing nothing but data collection and no alerting, no analysis, no use case. And I see this over and over again, because we got the product in, now I want the data. Yeah. Well, no, we need to do a cyclical, we need some wins. Mm-hmm. And the POC, you have them. So I see that way too much.
Yeah.
So I have a question. Ooh, that was really loud. So I see SIEM complaints up there, and I want to turn a complaint into a question. Do you all see more than 1 or 2 vendors today embracing 2 big techniques and use cases? The first use case and technique is that they're really tuned into the workflow and needs of analysts in a SOC. In other words, they demonstrate competency in understanding how SOCs work. And number 2, they've embraced both the performance and flexibility that big data type techniques bring to us today. Usually you guys see a vendor or more than one vendor, don't name names, that has got both nailed.
Come on, Carson, that was a statement.
No.
I mean, shots fired, let's be clear.
No.
That's totally fair.
No. If anyone can point me to one major commercially viable SIEM that the default use cases aren't absolute garbage, I would love to know. Yeah. They are. It's horrible. Everybody, and let's be honest, that's the open secret of this.
Raise your hand if you've gotten value out of the default rule sets. Come on, let's see it. Without tuning them. Like, just pure default.
Out of the box.
One.
That's awesome if you're able to do that, and I'd love to chat with you guys.
I've never seen that ever.
Because here's the thing, every network's unique, and I get that SIEM vendors have an uphill battle on this, but the defaults are horrible. I mean, they just are. It's like going to a clothing store and buying a suit off the rack. Yeah, you're wearing a suit, but you look kind of sloppy, and you need to have it tailored.
I feel you're talking about the workflows, right? And there's organizations that, as you know, they will buy a SIEM and they will just look at the alerts in the morning when they're fresh, they have coffee, and then it's like, I don't want to look at this anymore, right? And then there's like the mature SOC where you have all these processes and escalation, and it's like, okay, so tier 1, they're going to look at this for 10 minutes. If I can figure out, then I take it to tier 2, where there's a triage process. Like, what is that workflow, right? What does it mean? And it's so vastly different for each of the environments that we're working with.
One complaint I constantly have is not even workflow, but just UI design. I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but like I feel like it's a mental block just to run a search sometimes with the right parameters, and it's just like so many clicks.
Are you saying they're not built for analysis?
Yeah.
Well, so here's what's happened in the last couple of years, and this is just one man's opinion, but SIEMs now are being built to make gorgeous pew-pew maps that sell the SIEM, and then the poor analysts have to sit there and they have a barely usable hunk of crap.
So on that note, I just have to ask, because I love this. How many of you, either as a consultant recommending or as an employee, have TVs in a room that you explicitly know to change them out when management does a walkthrough? Which, by the way, is a fantastic idea. I encourage clients, like, you need those pew-pew maps to make it look like you're doing something, because really, like, the stuff that I love, it's ugly. And so when they walk through, you do the nice little pretty things, maybe even do an actual pew-pew map, because they love that. And then swap it out.
Like Norse.
Yeah.
All right, so I have a question. I'm probably biased because logarithm. Yay, we do all the things that you guys just asked. No, okay.
All the things we just complained about. Yeah,
exactly. We do all of them. It's so easy. But no. So in all seriousness, it means I'm kind of jaded in how I obviously approach clients and how implementation works in environments. From an outside perspective, or someone coming in and is maybe not totally stack and that's it, or specific SIEM vendor and that's it. With your clients, are you finding benefit in if you have a question or an issue of a question of implementation or how to get something into your environment, are you actually finding the answers you need? And if so, do you use multiple SIEMs at the exact same time to give you the roundabout answer, or do you actually get what you're looking for? And are clients actually finding it helpful to turn on a SIEM? It's been out now for a little bit longer. Is it getting better, or are we still just spinning wheels in the mud, nowhere to go?
I will say I taught 511 at Logarithm, as you know. And you guys did have a lot of UX designers in the class, and they were very interested in my take on stuff. So I think that it may be becoming a thing, to say, what do the analysts actually want? Like, let's make sure, because I would say a lot of things like that and be like, oh, well, what do you want? And I had a couple sessions where I'd I'd give them a demonstration of what I have and what I hate about it, and they were like, oh, do we do that? So things are looking positive in that respect.
I think there's more realization that what engineers sometimes develop out of a bubble doesn't work, right? For the end customer. I know, shocking, right?
Well, let's pick on Elastic. Like, their documentation is clearly wrote by developers. Like, it's horrible. And it's a communication gap.
It's getting a lot better, though.
Yeah, but I mean,
For
it
Elastic?
We've just gotten used to reading.
I would think it's more that because
turning to strength.
I don't know if I would agree with that.
It could be either, but I mean, I would say it's about having analysts sit with the people designing the product. If you're doing it in a bubble, it's going to be painful.
Yeah.
So, how do you maintain and report on continuous coverage in an Elastic or DevOps environment? That's more of a rhetorical question. That's huge, challenging.
Yeah.
Take everything
Continuously.
Yeah. Yes.
That was my answer. I think that's an issue everywhere. I mean, let's face it, our networks are not static, whether it's DevOps or whatever, they're changing. And I think, I'm not actually going to answer that question directly, but I think there's a lot of focus in the completely wrong areas. I think we're spending so much time on what seems like it would be a sexy detect, and kind of going back to an underlying theme, there are so many small, simple things that are what I coin high fidelity. You're not going to have a crap ton of false positives, and if they do alert, bam, it's not as, we spend too much upkeep time. There's way too much time, whether it's rolling out log agents or chasing down false positives. We just spend too much time there. And if we eliminate that, that kind of goes back and kind of helps with the, not the log sources, but a lot of the junk. Yeah.
So that's sort of a nice segue into my question. There's two parts. So what are some strategies you use to reduce alert fatigue, and what are some techniques you use to reduce the false positive rate with your SIEM?
I eliminate people. No.
Whoa.
No. Data science, clearly, Austin, right?
Yeah. That's the answer.
Yeah, no.
Machine learning. Oh, sorry, I said that.
Yeah. So what are some things you guys are doing for false positives and all that?
I mean, enrichment, right? That is what it is. It's all. That's the name of the game here. Whether it's enrichment ahead of time as the alert comes in, or what we've done is we've made ourselves an interactive sort of, not dashboard, but interface where when an alert comes in and it can't be pre-enriched, it's one click to check out additional things about it, and it helps us immediately throw away the alert and spend less time on it.
So to slightly twist the question, when I see things like alert fatigue or false positives, and God help you, false negatives, that usually is a symptom of a bigger issue in that you have consumed too much data too quickly. And one of the best bits of advice I ever got earlier on in my career was, if you don't like the output, reduce the input. And so I wish more people viewed SIEM implementation as a very long-term project and would start consuming a few servers at a time. And yeah, I get it. You may have 100,000 hosts, but you know what? Rome wasn't burned down in a day. I mean, built in a day. So you need to take it slow, and I would much rather consume only a web cluster and really understand what that telemetry is telling than gobbling up everything and then having 11 billion alarms that give you nothing.
And I think also that goes definitely what you're inputting here, but I think we're inputting a lot of I see a lot of initial implementations that all they're ingesting, their primary data sources, is security data. And in almost every deployment I do, that's actually the last thing I want. I want standard logs, DNS. We talk DNS, Windows, because those don't even really come with a bunch of alerts unless it's like Sigma or something like that, and they don't false as much because it's more intentional. We're not trusting a vendor to do some black box magic stuff.
And then asset data, right? Prioritization is like something that I like to ask the customers, like, what are you trying to protect here? And then you get different answers from different people. And then you ask the CISO or the CEO, that would say, everything? It's like, no, it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. What are you trying to protect, right? Where is it? What is that data? And what is that you're worried about? And then prioritize. Seth was talking yesterday, and that's something that we, again, shameful plug, that we teach in 5.11 too, right? Post-exploitation, focus on post-exploitation. You can't be, just looking at all these random vulnerability scans. Everyone is running a scan against your ports, right? What a surprise. So don't just waste your time on that. I've seen, like, a couple of weeks ago, an environment where just because the endpoint weren't tuned, they were just receiving like thousands of alerts per day of potentially unwanted software, right? Which is not really that relevant. But if you're having like 3,000 alerts with that every single day, where are you going to find what really matters in there, in that noise? So, as I said, right, reduce the input and focus on what matters really.
All right, I got a question for actually probably each one of you, if you don't mind, and I'll paint the scenario here. I am from a small organization, and we are, within the next year, going to be launching a project to build our network back up into the 21st century, so rebuilding it from scratch. A SIEM is on the list of things that we're going to be doing. I'm an IT department or security department of one. Sure. All right. So, and SANS 555 is a given. Okay. So, that in mind, what's the one piece of advice or one suggestion you would give me in terms of SIEM selection, implementation, and so on? The one thing that you feel is important.
This is going to be a really blanket statement, but I think my biggest thing I want everybody to do is focus on the basics. For example, you're re-architecting your network. I almost feel that's more important than even the SIEM you're picking. Because if you do that right, regardless of the tool you insert to monitor that, like outbound firewall deny, I mean, come on. If you get to that point, you do something that's been around since forever, that's a really powerful detection technique. So I would say just really, really focus on the basics like segmentation, architecture, because all of those will drive your detection.
Don't do segmentation. This is going to be very controversial. Private VLANs.
Well, that's segmentation.
That's aggressive segmentation.
So that's segmentation. I totally disagree with that. That's segmentation.
Okay. Private VLANs. Your network team is going to hate you. If you're the network team, my condolences. As a pen tester, I hate you. I cannot overstate how horrific it is when I do a client-side exploit. I pop a box, and then instead of seeing the entire domain, instead of seeing the subnet, I see your machine and the servers that you're allowed to see. I start swearing loudly. It kicks the bad guys in the teeth. Network segmentation, I'll call it that. But private VLANs are really where it's at, and that's a technology that we are well overdue in implementing as an industry.
And it's not new.
No, that's the shame and sorrow of it.
It's going to the basics, right? You're killing every single, almost all, right, possibilities of lateral movement over there.
Wait, should we say patching? Like, is that a little too extreme?
That's too boring. What I was going to say is, like,
look back to the basics.
I was going to say, look at like the CSC Top 20 and the Australian Signals Directorate, those kind of lists. Make sure you can nail those things, because if you're re-architecting, like that's a lot of the stuff that a lot of people who have very large established networks say, oh, we can't do that. It's too late now. The network's, it's beyond repair. But you're in a very unique.
So
so
nobody so far has said anything about SIEM.
Yeah, I know, and I was going to say, so that will help you.
But that's the point. Like, SIEM is just a tool, and again, we're using it improperly because if we're focusing so much on here and machine learning and all these cool whiz-bang things, all of this other stuff really would drive this thing into working really well. So.
Okay, earlier you had mentioned, video walls and the Pew Pew map, which, by the way, do work very well for visitors.
Yep.
We stole Norris's, feed our own data into it, and it looks awesome. But what are the most useful things you've seen put on a video wall for the people in my center? And I look at our video wall, and it's a beautiful one.
Movies.
It's
right.
huge.
Yes.
What do you
March
put
Madness.
up there that actually helps somebody?
Yeah, I think that's very broad.
I can give some specific examples. One of the things we like to keep up is Twitter with filters for things that have a certain amount of retweets or whatever. So when the NotPetyas and the WannaCries come around, you do know about that very quickly, and you can react as fast as reasonably possible. The other thing we do is we have specific graphs for like spam waves when they're coming in, so you can immediately see that like, oh, we got a wave of something crazy, being delivered. We can act on it right away. But having the physical location of cyber attack obviously is not something you can act upon. So that one is the one that
Do you guys use? I'm a fan of blank or red dashboards, meaning you see nothing, but then when something actually appears, it's an eye. Like humans were programmed to seem red, so I like to have ones that literally do nothing, unless there's something that I want you to go back to your cube and do something. Because if it's going to be up there, we need to react off of it. And I just don't. If we train someone like if you have the graphs that go between like green, blue, yellow, orange, red,
purple.
And they're like, do you realize that everything between green and red is a false positive? I mean, it's not exactly true, but there's so many of them. Yeah. So I'm a big fan of just it's green, or immediately it's red, and you need to go back to the desk and work on that.
simple.
I saw a dashboard once that really caught my imagination, and I've been coaching people to do this one more often. It just tracks when a machine last checked in. If you are going to receive any telemetry from that machine of any kind and it stops, that's more interesting to me. And so start looking for things like that. They basically did the same deal. Everything was okay until it wasn't, and at which point it would flip up, auto-generate a ticket, like, why is this server not feeding telemetry?
Just availability, right? I mean, most of this comes out of the NOCs, where typically what they would monitor is availability of is this router down or things like this.
I have a complaint I want to mention.
Yeah.
All right, so
that's no surprise.
I know, right? One of the complaints that I have I can't take SIEM vendors seriously is because why is it that updates break my correlations? Why do updates break my log ingestion? I realize as a SIEM vendor you have a tough job being flexible for everyone to be able to do that, but that until you can solve that problem, I can't take your product seriously. It just really angers me when you start changing a field name or start swapping what source and destination port means. Like, and like everybody's like, yeah, no, that's jacked up. That we're all like, yeah, that happens. No, that's insane. Like, imagine if you went, like took your car in for an oil change and then you show up and you're like, whoa, why is the steering wheel on the British side? And they're like, oh, it just happens. You came in for an oil change.
Imagine an AV signature killing, a legitimate DLL. That would never happen.
Touche. But I mean, it goes to a thing that I would encourage you guys. So if you're a vendor, like, try to be better. If you are a client, push your vendor for better. Like, it just really is shocking how accepting we are of really subpar engineering. And I get that humans make mistakes, but I don't know. It just really confuses me that we're, it's 2017 and we're having these sorts of problems.
Well, look what happened to Apple. Come on. Nothing surprising anymore.
It happens.
Yeah.
Right? Well, it's like you come to accept, oh, my credit card's been compromised. Oh, well, I'll get another card.
Yeah.
Yeah, Peter, I think.
Yeah, quick question. So I'm new to SIEM, and I've come to SANS for the truth. What skills do I need to have no matter what sim I'm running, I'm thinking in terms of regex across the board. You got to know regex. So what skills do you think I've got to have to run a sim?
You need to understand all the log format options and exactly what you want to do with those things and when it's appropriate to use each particular option just as a basic level. Because if you don't know what syslog is versus JSON and you can't decide how to collect it on your various endpoints and what you want to do with it and don't have a plan for it, how you're going to ingest it and enhance it, that's a pretty first level thing.
I'd say a huge one for me is you have to have some level of sysadmin in you. And where I'm going with that is absolutely that. You need to understand, what's a Windows log? Like, people struggle with that. Yeah. But even more so, from an automation standpoint, again, going back to like Doug's talk yesterday, if you spend 80% of your time maintaining and rolling out like log agents and stuff like that, that's an epic fail. And that is just so common. Anything else on that one?
How many people in here have looked at the detailed tab for a Windows log and know what format they're actually saved in under the hood?
Ugh. That's what TechNet's for.
Maybe like those old DNS, idling DNS logs, right?
Well, I was just talking about, when you go into Event Viewer, which everyone does, immediately it shows you the pretty version of it, but it's XML, right? Yep. And it is very parsable. You can extract it beautifully.
But then it's not really. Wait, there's more.
Yes, well, it's a binary format and all that, but yeah, it is already parsed for you when it's created, and then you have a lot of log agents that destroy that and turn it into syslog, like I mentioned yesterday, and then out flies all your beautiful parsing when you take something XML and you warp it into that, and now you have to re-regex it and do extra work. We shouldn't have to do that. We want to extract it in a way that's still cleanly and automatically parsable.
So I was actually going to take a real quick stab at that question and give another contrarian viewpoint to my esteemed colleagues on the stage. When I interview people working in a SOC, I actually ask them 3 questions. I'll only mention one that helps the candidate demonstrate they have a firm grasp on the fundamentals, and that they're also able to break down a relatively unstructured question, ask follow-up questions, and show knowledge of those fundamentals. And the first question I ask people is, if a user walks up to a normal computer in a normal building in a normal corporate network, and on the screen is a web page with a bunch of links displayed, from the time they click the button on the mouse to the time the new web page is displayed, what happens? Right? And I could get a million different answers to that question. It's really hard to cheat. The person could spend 10 minutes telling me about BGP. They could spend 10 minutes talking about interrupt handling. And by God, I'm going to test them on what a TCP handshake is. But from my perspective, if you understand the fundamentals of how computers' networks work, you can do anything.
Yep. That's good.
I'd like, if you don't mind, I'd like to continue on with that, because I've been doing SIEMs for 5 years, and I tell you, I ask myself that same question every day, still after 5 years. What do I have to know to be good at doing the SIEM stuff? Okay. My biggest thing that I tell people all the time is you got to know how to network, because you, as a SIEM administrator or a SIEM engineer, are not necessarily going to be a firewall engineer or a firewall expert. You might not be an IDS expert. You might not be a Windows expert, Linux expert, continue on. You got to know how to talk to those people to get those answers you need when one of their products starts doing something that you don't really understand. That's the biggest thing, because you are going to be a SIEM expert, but you're not going to be an expert in everything else. You got to be able to network with the other people who actually own those systems for you to be able to, give the best product to your customer.
Yeah. So I would love to keep going with the questions. I'm a little sad because we didn't get to do all the fun memes. Like, that was
the billable hour. You got to roll back a few.
Don't talk about it. We don't have time for that.
We don't talk about billable.
I'm comfortable saying, and I don't know if you guys are, at the end of the day, if you guys want to run more questions by us, we're not going to do an official panel, but this has been awesome. We didn't cover even a fraction of mixed rants. We have so much more stuff we go at. There's clearly some problems, and I think a lot of them are we need to stick with some basics here. I think there's a lot of stuff that works, right? Even machine learning is fantastic if you're mature enough to handle it, right? So there's just a lot of things we have to really think about and address. If you guys are cool with it, would you guys say maybe after the day we take a few more questions?
Sure. Sure.
Yeah. And because I have a feeling you guys would keep going. So with this, let's go ahead and let's move over for the next talk.